A grand jury is a secret proceeding, and I think this case is important. I think officer-involved shooting cases are important across the country, where we want to share all of that information with the public.
And with those words, history will not repeat itself in our state. Bernalillo County District Attorney Kari Brandenburg is doing things differently and with a really big case.
Her office has filed murder charges against 2 APD cops who shot and killed James Boyd last year. That means no grand jury process and more transparency. So what does all of this mean to all of us? We're covering all of the angles for you tonight with team coverage. We're going to start with Stuart Dyson, live at the District Attorney's office.
Stu, exactly how is the DA planning to move forward with this case, with this decision?
Well, guys, the DA wants to do a preliminary hearing in open court where a judge will then decide if the evidence is strong enough to put the 2 cops on trial. It won't be up to a grand jury meeting in secret to make that decision. Longtime District Attorney Kari Brandenburg won't discuss the evidence in the case, but she does believe there's enough to persuade a judge.
We think that there's evidence that gives us the legal standard probable cause. We've always said that if we can meet that standard, we will go forward. We believe that we can meet that standard, and we are going forward.
We do know some of the evidence. There's the lapel camera footage of the James Boyd shooting itself and the audio recording of Officer Keith Sandy 2 hours earlier when he apparently told another cop he wanted to shoot Boyd. Last month, APD revealed that it was investigating Brandenburg for attempting to bribe witnesses in a case against her troubled son, Jason Koch. Some have speculated it was an attempt to scare her away from charging the cops with murder.
Well, you know what? I'm going to let you guys speculate to that. I have been elected to serve as district attorney. I am going to serve as district attorney. I'm going to give the public my best efforts, and I'm not going to be intimidated. As long as I have a breath in my body, I will do what I think is right for the people that I represent.
Brandenburg has denied doing absolutely anything wrong in her son's case. He is a drug addict with a history of burglary and theft. Back to you.
Thank you, Stuart. The James Boyd shooting incident happened shortly before the Department of Justice slammed APD for having a history of using excessive force. The DOJ ordered the city to overhaul and reform our police department. That includes new training, better supervision, and new rules for investigating police shootings. The settlement between the 2 is almost a done deal, but before a federal judge gives it final approval, he's invited anyone with an opinion to speak up. The briefs will be heard before the court on January 21st.
Now, Keith Sandy has retired from the Albuquerque Police Department, and that went into effect in November. So since Sandy already retired, he would still get his pension if he was convicted. Now, as for Officer Dominique Perez, he is still with the police department, but he's been on administrative leave since that shooting back in March.
This is the first time Brandenburg has ever directly filed charges against an officer for shooting someone. And she's opted to bypass the grand jury, as we've been talking about. Ryan Luby is live at the Bernalillo County Courthouse to explain why that is so significant. Ryan, I'm sure some people are wondering if the Ferguson case, for instance, had an impact here.
Well, Tom, you would certainly think that. Remember, prosecutors in the Ferguson, Missouri case went through a grand jury process that was not very transparent. They took a lot of heat as a result of that. But Brandenburg says this case, even the one in New York City involving the death of Eric Garner, did not play a role in her decision on this one. Bottom line, the case here will be transparent. None of it will be done in secret. Her office will present the whole case in open court to a judge for everyone, including us and you and me, to listen to it. We'll see the lapel camera video undoubtedly, and we'll hear testimony from both sides.
And I think this case is important. I think officer-involved shooting cases are important across the country, where we want to share all of that information with the public. We want them to see it as it's unfolding. I think that that's critical, to be transparent, and I believe that that will be part of the healing process.
Well, Brandenburg is now in the national spotlight for making this decision, but she faces other serious questions like, what about those other officer-involved shootings, and how is this case any different than those? Well, tonight at 6 o'clock, she'll explain why they are different, and she tells us why she believes that her office was just as transparent with those cases then as she is with this one now. For now, we're live downtown. I'm Ryan Luby, KOB Eyewitness News 4.
This is a day in which the citizens of the city of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County should be proud that our representative has the courage to say no one is above the law and no one is below the law, that every life in the city of Albuquerque matters.
And this decision also matters to James Boyd's family. You just heard from the attorney who is representing it. She says his loved ones are feeling very relieved. However, she also believes someone else won with this announcement. She's going to explain who coming up in just a bit. But of course, Keith Sandy's lawyer disagrees strongly with her. He said the district attorney's office is unjustified in filing these murder charges.
That's right. Sam Bregman is defending Keith Sandy, and his main argument is that Sandy had the right to shoot James Boyd, and he claims that Sandy was protecting his fellow officer from Boyd, who was holding 2 knives.
I'm very confident and adamant about the fact that there's been no criminal act committed.
Sam Bregman doesn't believe his client, retired APD officer Keith Sandy, is guilty of murdering James Boyd. He says Sandy is pretty upset.
He spent his whole career in life protecting people. And the idea that he's charged with murder because he's protecting a fellow officer, you can imagine, that goes right to his core. It hurts. It hurts bad.
Sandy was on duty when he shot Boyd back in March. His lawyer says it all happened because Boyd got too close to another officer who was with a canine.
And that officer is alive, and unfortunately Mr. Boyd lost his life. But when a mentally unstable, unpredictable, dangerous man with 2 knives is 8 feet on higher ground away from an officer who does not have a gun drawn, he is justified in protecting that officer and shooting that man.
Bregman says Boyd pulled out those same knives on 2 open space officers and threatened them hours before the rest of the officers arrived. We asked Bregman how is the murder charge unjustified when there's this audio recording suggesting Sandy intended to shoot Boyd hours before it happened.
He said he was going to shoot with a taser shotgun. Now, does a taser shotgun sound like lethal force? No, there's a reason for that. That's the mindset when they're going up there. They're called out there, Keith particularly, because that unit had taser shotguns. That's what's said on that. You don't shoot someone with a taser shotgun because you're premeditating killing him. That's not the case at all. Far from it.
Now a judge will decide in a preliminary hearing whether to keep or dismiss Sandy's open murder charge. Live in the newsroom, Stephanie Claytor, KOB Eyewitness News 4.
While attorney Sam Bregman defended Keith Sandy today, an attorney for James Boyd's family was listening. She took issue with some of Bregman's comments. Erica Zucco is live downtown with her reaction. Erica.
Yeah, Tom, attorney Shannon Kennedy is representing the family of James Boyd, and she says that the way defense attorney Sam Bregman portrayed Boyd was, in a word, dehumanizing. She also takes issue with Bregman's descriptions of how he says Boyd threatened the open space officers. She says Boyd was provoked by them when they woke him up while he was sleeping and tried to pat him down, but she says Boyd did not assault them and their lives were not in immediate danger when Keith Sandy and Dominique Perez shot him.
James Matthew Boyd cannot speak for himself. Sadly, he's gone. His client killed him. It was an unlawful taking of life. Police officers should not be allowed to operate above the law.
And now the family of James Boyd has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against APD and the city of Albuquerque, and they'll be watching the upcoming hearing closely. Live downtown, Erica Zucco, KOB Eyewitness News 4.
Ahmad Assad has been watching today's events with great interest. He is a well-known defense attorney here in town and has lived in Albuquerque almost his entire life. So a judge will now decide if the cases against these 2 officers should move forward. If the answer happens to be yes, what's going to happen next?
Well, it'll go on a particular track, probably a complex case track, and probably this time next year we'll be in trial with a conclusion as to whether guilt or not guilty on behalf of the defendants.
Okay, so Mr. Assad, if openness and transparency are 2 things we embrace as a society, Why did it take so long to get to today's announcement?
Well, I don't believe that it was political or driven by media. I think there may have been an internal timeline associated with the investigation and review of the case. We don't know, but at the end of the day, I think that we heard Ferguson and we heard Staten Island, and I believe Kari Brandenburg thought the best process moving forward is an opportunity for transparency and clarity and have the community involved.
All right. With today's announcement, who wins, who loses?
The community wins. There is no loss. The community has a stake. They're a stakeholder. Everybody is involved. Everybody sees what gets involved. They understand the witnesses. They understand the evidence. And so I think the community as a whole wins as a result of the decision to proceed to preliminary examination.
It's out there in the open.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you. Ahmad Assad. Appreciate it. We're going to have more coverage on the DA's ruling tonight at 6. In the meantime, you can stay up to date on everything by visiting KOB.com. You can also follow along on our Twitter and Facebook pages.